want to give a special thanks to Zapsplat.com for providing the sound effects and opening music to the chapters. On to the story.
Chapter 3 Voices. I had not been privy to the research that Dr. Bayous was conducting all those years. Let's be serious. Teenage girls are simply not interested in the dynamics of acoustic engineering. Even his colleagues, I would come to learn, weren't sure if he could pull it off. He'd been laboring over his prototype Voices GPS for over 9 years. He had confided in me when I was attending the university that at times progress would grind to a halt until a specific roadblock could be overcome in materials science and engineering. The first major breakthrough came in the advancement of piezoelectric ceramics for subsonic hydrophones. As I plowed through my own studies in the sciences, I could better understand his patience. His faith in Moore's laws, which dictates a predictable improvement in computer processing speeds, would have impressed even Steve Jobs. He knew that it was only a matter of time and tenacity before improvements in computer processing could synchronize with the three hydrophones, one to specifically record the vocalizations, heartbeat, and respiration of a tagged whale, a second, the most complex, that would recognize the different dialects of all cetaceans up to 400 miles. This required it to operate in a range of 10 Hz to 250 decibels. Finally, the third to record sounds within the exclusive range of human beings, from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. The onboard computer not only had to coordinate inputs from all three hydrophones, the processor would have to filter out ambient noises like cargo ships and other human traffic on the seas. It became apparent to me why he was working in conjunction with the Scripps Institute and other cetacean specialists. The processor had to recognize the different dialects of the recorded cetaceans. Finally, it had to record the usual parameters of location, date, time, water temperature, velocity, depth dive sequences, and it had to have the ability to bulk dump all previous data to the Argos satellite network in cooperation with the NOAA every time the tag whale came up for air. It would be necessary to accomplish this feat for a total of 90 days until the Voices GPS would dislodge. At that point, it would be retrieved by a custom drone sent from an NOAA research vessel. As is the case with practically all scientific breakthroughs, this required time and money. Finally, on May 12th of 2014, and $478 million later, he had succeeded. This was literally 5 days after I graduated with my own doctorate. However, time was of the essence. Just 2 months earlier, the International Court of Justice, in a 12-4 majority ruling, had determined that Japan's hunting of whales had, in fact, no scientific basis. This was a victory for cetacean activists the world over. Unfortunately, it only covered the Antarctic whaling hunts. Japan's smaller hunts in the northern Pacific Ocean would not be affected. There's one thing I need to tell you in the full spirit of disclosure. I had read the Japanese Coast Guard's preliminary report on the sinking of the Makana Maru, and I made the connection consistent with my thesis that a mixed pod of very large cetaceans, likely blues and sperm whales, had made the coordinated attack possible through their common subsonic vocalizations. I kept that to myself, for the time being. Since Paul's specialty is acoustic engineering, not marine biology, he would require cetacean specialists to deploy the first 5 Voices prototypes. I remind myself if I had slept in on that cold morning back in 2002, instead of going paddleboarding with my dad, there was no way I would have ever had been at the right place at the right time. Let's just say it was the best phone call I have ever received. Hello, Jenny, it's Uncle Paul. I need your help. Now, the geopolitical ramifications of tagging large cetaceans in international waters, with funding in partnership with the NOAA, public educational institutes, and private philanthropy, involved a mastery of logistics that was new to me. Uncle Paul, having long since mastered the diplomacy involved, said that it just came with the territory. Fortunately, he was able to secure a full 2 years of Argos satellite time, fully encrypted, so that he could work out the bugs of his Voices GPS. How he pulled that off, I still don't know. His project was just one of 47 different United States projects utilizing the platform in cooperation with the NOAA and the French Space Agency. These projects all combined represented over 43% of the Argo satellite capacity. If things went as planned, Paul and I were certain the Voice's GPS would lead to new discoveries about the private lives of cetaceans and in revealing how they communicate across species. It might just put a stop to the hunting of whales across the globe. This was, of course, more of a hope than an objective. In the privacy of his office, I figured the time had come for me to tell him about my suspicions concerning the sinking of the Makana back in January. Sweet Jesus, you're kidding. No, you're not kidding me. Jenny, how many people do you think can connect your thesis to the Japanese Coast Guard's final report? The NOAA could cancel our permits to tag if they were aware of such knowledge. I have only shared my opinion with one other person, one of my research assistants, Tim Wiley. With you now, that makes just 3 of us. I can trust him. He won't say a word. Let's keep it that way for as long as possible. Assemble your crew and be ready the first week of June to start tagging. With those parting words, I prepared for my first expedition. By Monday, May 19th of 2014, I had assembled my crew, who I affectionately called my sea taggers. C for cetacean, of course. Now, Tim Wiley, just 3 years behind me at the University of Hawaii, was working on his own doctorate in marine biology. I knew that he'd be the first person I would choose for the mission. We just clicked, and I liked his laid-back attitude. The other crew members, Captain John Trudeau, master of the NOAA fisheries and research vessel, the Makana, First Mate Thomas Campbell, Engineer Mary Collins, and Marine Veterinarian Dr. Maya Akinwole, together comprised 62 years of experience in marine sciences. However, due to the proprietary nature of the Voice's GPS, I had to ask the crew to sign a non-disclosure agreement as a condition of serving on the mission. Even the captain had to sign. This gave each crew member 2 weeks to back out of the mission if they had reservations. It was as Paul had predicted. Not one of them rescinded the agreement. As the Makana, which means gift in Hawaiian, left the NOAA's Office of Marine and Aviation Operations Port in Honolulu, Oahu, on the morning of Tuesday, June 3rd, Engineer Mary Collins asserted her candid nature. Question, Dr. Hudson. I've been on tagging missions before, 6 to be exact, but I never had to sign an NDA before. What makes Dr. Bayou's GPS so special? I had not planned to give the crew a full briefing until we got closer to our tagging area. However, upon reflection and Mary's impatience, I changed my mind. I wanted them to know that they were all participants in a first-of-its-kind mission. Also, I reasoned that the sooner that they had the information they needed to do their own jobs, the better they might be able to anticipate problems. Captain, would you call the rest of the crew to the bridge, please? I'll give the briefing now. Tim, grab me a voices from their cargo hold, would you please? While Tim retrieved a prototype from the hold, I met with the rest of the crew on the bridge. I needed to be clear about the technical aspects of Dr. Bayou's invention, so I figured the best way was to start with what they already knew about the technology. There are really only 2 problems with the field of cetacean tagging. One is the risk of the tag falling off prematurely. The second is the bottleneck of data presently available. We know so much about our state-of-the-art capabilities, but let's be honest with ourselves. We don't know their world. We can't see with their eyes. And we can't understand what they hear, never mind what they're saying. I will first explain the secure placement of the tag. Just then, Tim returned with a voice of tag and handed it over to me. At 13 inches long and shaped like a large red cigar cut in half lengthwise, it was unlike any other tagging device anyone in this crew had seen before. It was definitely big. But being only a maximum of 6 inches at the center, tapering to the tips, it was clearly designed to be hydrodynamic. This obvious point I let speak for itself. Turning it over, I said, as you can see, 2 inches from each end of the pair of retracted 3.5 centimeter curved barbs. Standard practice in cetacean tagging. But in this center field, between the barbs, a cellulose bladder filled with special non-toxic epoxy, sealed until the barbs sink into the blubber. This epoxy is activated by salt water. It is Dr. Bayou's and our hope that this will solve the problem of premature tag detachment. Initial tests showed that this double bond of barbs and epoxy should enable the tag to remain on a target whale for at least 90 days. I could tell that Mary Collins' silence, unlike the rest of the crew, was due to pure skepticism. She let it fly. That's all fine and dandy, Dr. Hudson. I am impressed. But how much PSI can Dr. Bayou's voices tolerate? Now that is an engineer's question, I complimented while pointing at her. It is rated theoretically up to 4,335 pounds per square inch. You're shitting me. That device can still function down to 10,000 feet? Mary blurted out. I could tell that she was instantly embarrassed at her lack of professionalism, and the shooting glance from Captain Trudeau made it clear as well. I remember at the time thinking that my personal life was not yet any of their business, but I desired to reassure her and the others by stating, I have known Dr. Bayou since I was in high school. He was a colleague of my father and a dear friend of my family. He's been working on the voices for almost 10 years. And I believe him. How do we retrieve the tag after it falls off for whatever reason? Asked Dr. Akinwole. We have on board 2 custom drones that are deployed by the retrieving vessel that will save us the hassle of having to retrieve a floating cigar from a Zodiac. Since the buoyancy of the tags is balanced and constant, and the drones have its coordinates, we have found that they perform well in choppy seas, but not exceeding 12-foot swells. The drones, of course, have onboard cameras that are water resistant, but wait until you hear what voices record, I said with obvious glee. Okay, it's showtime. I thought as I opened my laptop to present the audio files from our field test. Taking the voices back in my hand, I flipped to the top position and explained the layout of the 3 onboard hydrophones, starting with the one in front. This forward hydrophone, designated H1, is attached to the front left barb on the bottom. It has subsonic capabilities, and its job is to record the tag whale's heartbeat, respiration, and vocalizations at all times. Get out, Mary quipped in disbelief. You will know what it's saying at a given spot? No, not yet. We will know it is vocalizing at a given spot. The voices programmed back at Dr. Bayou's lab will try to figure out what it is saying. Those are 2 separate things. What we will know at the same time, however, are its vital signs, heartbeat, respiration, and its direction or change in direction when the vocalization occurs. I could see that Captain Trudeau wanted to conquer the haste of his engineer and have her listen to the full briefing before she ramped it again. So, looking directly at Mary, he said, You stand by. What else does it do, Dr. Hudson? Grateful for his assertion, I continued. This center hydrophone, H2, took the longest for Dr. Bayou to figure out. It records all citation calls up to 400 miles, depending on the load of the ambient sound filter. This is the cool part. The processor, which also links up the forward and aft hydrophones, already knows which kind of cetaceans, from blue whales to spinner dolphins, are vocalizing and calculates which likely pod or subgroup that is communicating. Thus it records all clicks, codas, grunts, and of course songs, and determines if it's coming from a known tagged whale. If it is not on file, the processor will create one. The hydrophone here, H3, I said, pointing 2 inches from behind the H2, records all sounds within the human range of 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz. As you well know by now, we use the Argos satellite to dump data, but we're talking about a 328 gigabyte onboard processor. It also covers the usual GPS tag parameters of location, depth of dive sequences, water temperature, potential for hydrogen, and velocity. The antenna runs the length of the body of the GPS. It is Dr. Bayou's belief that the ocean, even without the noise of cargo ships and the like, is a noisy place on a subsonic level. The voice of GPS should let us know what the cetaceans are saying from the point of view of an individual, and it will let us know all the bulk dump information when the target whale surfaces. It is our hope that we can tag 5 adult blue whales from the same subspecies and figure out how they talk to each other. Pausing to make sure they were all still with me, I said, Shall I proceed? Looking at his now wrapped crew, Captain Trudeau smiled and answering, Please do. Continuing with the briefing of the crew, I opened up the audio files, and if I don't mind saying, proceeded to blow their minds with the results of the field test. We triangulated 3 of the models 200 miles apart and 200 miles off the coast of Coos Bay, Oregon a few weeks back. We could not be more pleased with the results. Hitting the play button and turning up the volume on the laptop, I just let the audio file play. What the crew of Makana heard was unlike anything they had heard before. A virtual conversation of cetaceans, as if someone had recorded the banter of a ballroom party, but with whales instead. What you're hearing are the different conversations of resident humpbacks, migrating California grays, and when I speed up the Sisonic hydrophone recording, 4 blue whales. Absolutely fucking amazing, exclaimed Tom Campbell as the rest of the crew nodded in agreement. However, I was just getting started. But wait, it gets better. If I shelf the audio to play only the subsonic wavelengths of the blues, we see that they're talking to each other. What the voices is actually doing is deciphering call response communications between 3 of the blue whales. At that point in the briefing, I opened up a new window on the field laptop to reveal graphs of the conversations, concluding with the crew, in time we should be able to decipher by their movement what they are communicating to each other. That is why we are here. The crew was beyond impressed and expressed their feelings of amazement to one another as I concluded my report and shut down the laptop. In closing, I said, we have 5 tags, only 2 weeks to place them. Captain Trudeau can confirm that we possess the proper permit for what it is we're about to do. Tag blue whales and see what they have to say. With that, and much to my relief, I might add, the crew applauded and I dared a modest bow. That ends Chapter 3. If you like it, like and subscribe. And Chapter 4, we get introduced to Bart, the star of the book. Goodbye.